Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I am back this time, for real. And I meant it each and every time that I said it before. However, there was some divine disruptions that kept me from doing so. So before we get into this episode, I want to say thank you, as I always do, to everyone who is still here. I haven't really been active since 2023, and you all are still here. So thank you for that. Just a recap to anyone who is new, StorytellHER was birthed on 8/18/2020 when the Spirit of the Living God told me to create a podcast based on testimonies and stories. And StorytellHER was built with warrior stories in mind. I saw a quote that resonated with me, and it talked about how we don't sit around anymore and share stories. We don't share our warrior stories about how we overcame. And so that's how StorytellHER was birthed. Chapter one, my very first episode is me sharing my testimony. Um, I think if you're new, it's very important for you to go to that episode, at least the first three episodes of StorytellHER, so you can get a feel for who I am, what I do, and why I am doing it. So here we are. The last episode that I created was called Chapter 44, and it is titled, Where Have I Been? And I gave an update, but I will elaborate a little bit more on that since that was literally a year and a month ago. That was March 14th. The podcast I made before that was around January 1st, and it was the word of the year that the Lord gave me. And that podcast is titled Rise and Build. And it is a teaching on Nehemiah, where God was calling him to build. And I love the story of Nehemiah. It's one of my favorite stories. And what stood out to me in the story of Nehemiah was that he had to build with a weapon in one hand to fight against his enemies, and which was a sword. And he also had to build with a hammer. So he had a sword, which I love to call the word of God, because when we dress in the armor of God, the sword is the word. And he had a hammer as he was building. So he was fighting and building at the same time. And in reflection, that's basically what I have been doing, my husband and I, for the last year and 4 months, fighting and building at the same time. I'll get into that. So I am back. I have a whole lineup of new guests, and we are calling this Story Tell Her Book 2, Chapter 1. Because if you go back, all of my episodes are called chapters. And when I was talking about this idea with my husband, he was like, yeah, because you literally turned a new page. Like we have turned a new page. So this episode is called Divine Disruptions, My Prophetic Journey. And I'm going to try not to ramble. This is not scripted. So I'm just going to tell the story of where we've been in the last 2 years. November 2022, I was at RIG Canada. RIG is our church. It is led by Apostle Tomi Oriami and Prophetess Tamar. And Occupy is one of the biggest conference every year. And in 2022, I wasn't able to go to Occupy, Texas. So I drove 4 hours to Toronto to go to Occupy Canada. And in that meeting, God gave me a vision of Antonio and I starting a house church. And I was journaling what I saw, I was journaling what I heard, and I told God, you are going to have to tell your son because he's not going to believe me. During that time, my husband was preparing to become an elder in the church, like he was in theology school. And it was a long time coming journey. And so I came home and I didn't tell my husband anything. I just continued to pray about what I know God showed me. And my husband at the time was in his last year of school. But the more time went by, God continued to deal with me about us starting a house church. So one day I told my husband what I saw and what the Lord said, and I don't recall him saying too much. A lot of people close to us continuously asked us, when Antonio becomes an elder, what is he going to do? When Antonio becomes an elder, are y'all going to start your own church? When Antonio becomes an elder, what's next? And he would get so overwhelmed by that question that he would tell people once he graduated, he believed that that's when God would tell him what to do. So God continued to deal with me with the plans of the house church, how it was supposed to look, how it was supposed to be laid out. And it started to be like fire shut up in my bones where I couldn't just keep it to myself. And I kept telling my husband about it. And my husband is a muser and he doesn't react to things right away, but he mused over it. And at some point, I got the message that he really didn't want me to talk about it anymore. And so I just wouldn't bring it up to him anymore. I just prayed about it. And we were set to leave. I don't remember the exact date, but I'll say we were set to leave July 27th to go to Florida for him to graduate and get his eldership license. But on July 26th, Apostle Alex from Rig and Apostle Carol from Rig went live on Instagram where they used to do Prophetic Cost Live, where they would give prophetic words to people. And I was packing. I had no intentions of joining this Prophetic Cost, but Apostle Carol invited me to watch it. And so I was watching Alex and two other women prophesy to people. I didn't ask to join. I had them in my Bluetooth listening while I was packing. And then no one asked to join. And Apostle Alex said, we're gonna call up Montia January. And so I'm like, okay. Apostle Alex and the two women gave a word from the Lord that made me ugly cry on Instagram Live. It's an 11-minute video or a prophetic word that was given, but I'll sum it up. And basically, what Apostle Alex said, he basically was prophesying about some things that I have endured in the past. And then he saw that Antonio January joined the live. And he said, oh, is that your husband? Good, because I have a word for him too. And then he said, God is calling you all to start a house church, and you're not going to need anybody's permission to do it. And I cried so hard on the live because I felt like, isn't this just like God? To where my husband was saying the day that he graduates, God will tell him what it is that he's supposed to be doing. However, God had already showed me, and I told him, and then the man of God confirmed it the day before we were to leave for him to graduate and receive his elder's license. And I know a lot of people take that the wrong way, like, how dare she, or who does she think she is? Like, that's just some of the things that I have come up against with what happened and this divine disruption. But of course, we still move forward with the graduation and him receiving his eldership license. And we were going to stay right in the church that we were in until God said, okay, now this is the time for you to create the house church. But without going into too much detail, in September 1st, 2023, we knew that that was actually the time for us to leave and to begin the house church at Home with Christ in January of 2024. We gave God our yes. And answering the call of God, we thought that so many people were going to be on board, that they were going to be excited for us. Like, yeah, we're giving God our yes. We know what we heard, we know what we saw, but that wasn't the case. And that's okay because not where we're going, not everybody is supposed to come. And not everybody understood the call because it's not a traditional call. And what God said to us is that we're called to the unchurched, and we're called to those who have experienced church hurt, to those who stand in the middle of, they've been at church before, but they've been hurt, and so they're like, I'm not ever stepping foot in a church again, where we invite them into our home, we go over the Bible, heavy emphasis on apologetics, and for the unchurched who have a lot of questions, who can't necessarily answer them in church environments. And so we've created a safe space. That's what At Home with Christ is. Um, we've got a lot of questions, like, why would Antonio spend so much time becoming an elder to leave the church and be in a home? And so it became a very raw journey, if that makes sense, from being in a traditional church, and we truly believe in being in a traditional church. We belong to a traditional church. We still serve in a traditional church At Home with Christ, and Rig X Expressions takes place on Saturdays so that we can still serve in Rig Global on Sunday mornings. We're just bridging the gap of the unchurched and those with church hurt to come back into the fold of community. So a lot of people did not understand what it is that we're doing, and it brought us both into a place where, and I believe in transparency. I One thing I know is that millennials and Gen X are all about authenticity. And I know generations before us, we, and I'm gonna say we because I kind of did that too. where we try to paint this picture of once you come to Christ, everything is perfect, everything is excellent, as Monty Joyce would say, everything is sunshine and rainbows. And it's just not. Like we all go through divine disruptions. And those divine disruptions can be painful. But there's also a bright, beautiful side to the divine disruptions. And giving God our yes. The raw part of it is brand new, where we're used to traditions and systems that worked for us. They were the foundation of our spiritual journey to now turning the page to something new, pioneering. And we've never seen it done before. So it's like just me and my husband and our children, right? We left on September 1st, 2023. But 3 weeks later, my best friend and my sister, Ariel Pollard and Tiffany Mensa and I were set to go to Women Evolve, which is our tradition. Um, we were all lined up to go to a hotel, but we lost our reservations and we all had to be in a home together. And Tiffany Mensa, her first lady, PK, hosted us at her best friend's house. PK and her husband, PB, started their ministry in their home. So my feelings are still raw in this transition. And I meet PK and she said, Tiffany brought her up to speed of what I was going through, where we were and what God called us into. And PK was like, "Oh, this is so exciting." Like if you meet her, she just has such a bubbly, nurturing personality. And she's like, "Aren't you excited?" And honestly, I was like, "No." I am, I feel naked. Like I feel like I'm just out here. And we got home from Woman Evolve, and PK has this grace to ask questions, to build community, and to pull people in closer. And we sat down on the couch, and she asked all the ladies in the room a question. And I don't remember what that question is, but I'm sitting on the couch. PK is sitting on the floor next to me, and she has her arm resting on me like this. And I was like, she about to pull me in to minister. She's about to pull me in to minister. And it became, through discernment, it became obvious that a woman in the room needed deliverance. And PK looked at me and she said, "Are you ready?" And we began to pray for this woman, and we had a whole deliverance session. Like, I can't put to words what happened in that room, but Holy Spirit came in and ministered to each and every woman in that room and basically showed me what a house church looks like and how it is possible. Like basically he confirmed what it is that he was calling Antonio and I to do. And so when the deliverance session was over, PK looked at me again and she said, "You ready? You can do this." And so I left Texas believing and knowing that my husband and I can do this. And at the same time that God was calling us to build at home with Christ, I was also, prior to that, working with my friend Liz. Matter of fact, that's the name of my podcast with her, my friend Liz, to build and a rig expression. And so that is a prophetic hub under the leadership of Rig Global, Rig USA, where it's a prophetic ministry. And Liz went through some health challenges And she wasn't able to continue to build with me. So Antonio and I started building it together. So basically, we're building two ministries at the same time, At Home with Christ Ministries and Rig Expressions. This is where I'm going into my prophetic journey because there's some things I wouldn't share on social media, especially when we left our home church, because I told Antonio, I'm like, they don't know me as this. Like, they know me as the children's church leader. They don't know the prophetic side of me. However, it has always been there. It just wasn't nurtured until 2020, until COVID, when time slowed down. Um, I am a dreamer. I am a seer, and I have been most of my life. My mom is, my cousin Shine Shine is. Shout out to Shine Shine. Um, and there's probably more members in our family who are, but actually don't know that they carry the gift. And I even in the church that we were in, I would have specific dreams that would come to pass that I would share with our pastor and first lady at the time, where they were like, that's a great gift to have. However, it wasn't a gift that they knew how to train me up in. And so it's just, I kept a dream journal, but I never pursued the gift or tried to develop it a little deeper. It's something my mom and I would talk about a lot, like discuss our dreams a lot. And until one day, I had a dream about my best friend. She wasn't my best friend at the time. We were just starting a relationship. And I had a dream that she texted me, I just lost my job. That was all the text message said. I woke up from the dream. I put it in my dream journal and I prayed against it. I'm like, Lord, I rebuke this dream in the name of Jesus Christ. Like, she is a family of six like mine. Nowadays, you need two incomes to be in a financially good place. And I'm like, she just can't lose her job. And I think it was 2 weeks to the date I had that dream. I was in my daughter's room. I received a text message. I picked up my phone. It was Ariel. I just lost my job. And when I read that, I sat down on my daughter's bed and I was like, no, 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 no. She can't lose her job. And so I began to pray right where I was. And I want to say the next hour to hour and a half was chaotic because even though she lost her job, somehow, some way, she was able to fight for it. Like, if y'all know Ariel, my best friend is a fighter. She don't just take anything. But within, I want to say by the end of the day, she had her job back. But I'm going back and forth with her in this entire process. And it was so stressful. It had a good outcome. But when it was over, I said, Lord, you have to teach me. You, you, you have to teach me about what I have, why I have it, and how to how to use it. What do I do with this gift? So of course, I went to YouTube University and I came across Dr. Faith Wokuma. Hmm. If you know, you know. James Gall, who I lovingly call Uncle James. And if you a dreamer and you a seer and you don't know who James Gall is, you have to know who he is. Like, what I love about him is he's a historian. And so he has documented so many of the last moves of God. And just, we have the same birthday and we have the same favorite number. And he's just special. I just love him. But I also came across Apostle Tony and Apostle Toby. And when the world shut down, I binged watched every every video on YouTube that I could, taking all kind of notes. I bought every James Galt book. And this is only a third of them. No, I bought every James Galt book I could buy. I'm in Dr. Faith Wukoma's Dreamers and Seers Club to help develop the gift. And one day Liz and I were talking, and she says, I'm part of the Rig Master class. No, she said, I've been watching these twins, and I've joined the Rig Master class. And I'm like, I've been watching some twins too. And I said, Apostle Tommy and Apostle Toby. And she said, yes, I'm in Apostle Tommy's master class and you should join. But it had already started. And even though I'm a dreamer and a seer, I did not feel like I was on the level of the prophetic like Liz. Like Liz, y'all have to go back. I'm trying to make this short, but y'all have to go back to watch my story with Liz. God has been all over our relationship, but we met 16, 17 years ago, and I was her assignment. But oh my gosh, y'all gotta go back to that episode. She's so prophetic in how God uses her and how she hears. Like Liz and I can be at brunch, lunch, dinner, a coffee shop, and we will be talking, and she will stop in the middle of our conversation, go and give somebody a prophetic word, and come back and talk to me like nothing has happened. And so I did not believe that I was on the level or should even be in anybody's masterclass, the School of the Prophets, like she was. But the following year, she was in the 2021 class. I took the 2022 class, and about the second class, I'm looking at all these people who hear, right? I see. And so there's a big, I won't get into that. Apostle told me he was teaching, and I was sitting in front of the laptop like, I don't belong here. I literally thought that in my head, I don't belong here. And as Apostle Tommy was teaching, he said, if you don't think you belong here, you do. And so I said, okay, God, I know that you told that man to say that so that I will stay right here. So I stayed in the master class. I gave it all I could. I ended up graduating in 2022 because she don't keep a certificate, okay? Dr. Faith will come and be like, y'all love y'all certificates, huh? Because we need the proof. We need the piece of paper. Graduated in 2022, masterclass student, and went on in 2023 to be a trainer of the next prophetic class that was coming up. And so I've been trained in the prophetic. So many people, um, they don't like that. They don't believe that that is a thing, but it is a thing. And if you are prophetic, if you are a dreamer, I encourage you to stir up the gift. I encourage you, matter of fact, shameless plug, join COP. That's the company of the prophets where Apostle Tommy teaches, he has prophetic activations. Be in a community of the prophets where you can stir up the gift. Um, so I call this a prophetic journey to bring everybody up to speed as to where I am and where I have been the last 2 years. Saying yes to God, and I keep coming back to this point because I don't want to make it sound sad, but I do want to make it real. Um, Saying yes to God has its blessings. My husband and I relationship grew stronger. Our communication got better. Like we literally became on one accord where we can finish each other's sentences. I mean, we could before, but I'm speaking about on a spiritual level with planning different things and um talking about different things scripturally. And the community that has surrounded us were not the people that we expected, but it's the people that love us and have experienced what we have experienced and have the language for the transition. And God has truly ordered our steps in His word. Um, it was our biggest season to trust God. Apostle Tommy has a song called Trust Fall. And it was literally the season of the three-strand cord, which is found in Ecclesiastes, where it's the husband, the wife, and God. And we wouldn't have it any other way. We grew up a lot. Um, our children get to witness firsthand what it looks like to say yes to God and to build. And honestly, they have been building with us. Um, but it also came with, and if I'm honest, our yes hurt people. And it left a lot of people confused. And some people still don't understand. But the best that I can say to that is you'll understand better by and by. And to other people, I would love to say, don't despise the prophetic. Like, I am having the time of my life right now. My husband and I minister together with Riggs' online audience. I would have never thought that in a million years. Like, my husband, and I'll let him tell his own story. He has been hurt by the prophetic before, to where when I was on the journey of training, he was like, the only prophet I trust is you, where he didn't want to receive a prophetic word from anybody. And so I know this sounds like rambling. I hope it made sense. Um, I'm back. I'm here. Next week, I am doing a podcast with Shayana. She was one of the young ladies who was in the room when we were in Texas for a Woman Evolved, who witnessed the deliverance. And one thing that I love about Shayana is that we have similar journeys. Like, she was called out, her and her husband, and people were like, why y'all want to do that? And so we just connected in such a way. I'll let her tell her own story next week, but we back. I love y'all. Continue on this journey with me. I pray that this story encourages somebody. See y'all next week.